Judge number 3, Nene Leakes, your question please.
A recent report shows that in 40% of American families with children, women are the primary earners, yet they continue to earn less than men. What does this say about society?
I think we can relate this back to education and how we are continuing to try to strive to figure out how to create jobs right now. That is the biggest problem, and I think especially the men are seen as the leaders of this, and so we need to try to figure out how to create education better so that we can solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Utah. Thank you, sweetheart.
Well, that was pretty damn embarrassing, Miss Utah, but it's okay. We're going to speak for you. See, we're going to say what you should have said to Miss Nene Blonde Hair Leakes. You know, it's funny that they used her to ask that particular question, and we're going to talk about her too, because she is like the poster child for the black feminist, independent woman nonsense going on right now. But that's a different video. But yeah, Miss Utah, you should have responded a little bit like this. Absolutely, there is a disparity between pay between men and women, but those disparities can be explained real simple. A large percent of those disparities are first due to choice of women, and well, first will be biology, and second will be choice. The choices that women choose in certain careers tend to be careers that are less lucrative when it comes to making financial gains. They tend to engage in fields and activities that don't require such. Secondly, when women do choose fields that are very lucrative, a lot of women tend to not lean in, so to speak, and digress and fall back and focus on becoming housewives or mothers, what have you. But we're gonna have another video. We're gonna have another discussion on the pay gap bullcrap nonsense, because it's a tool that the left uses during political seasons to demonize the right and get the left more votes, and it works, sadly enough. But shout out to Sticky Fingers. He sent me this article about that another gem refuting the nonsense and the choices. This article particularly focuses on the choices that women make when it comes to the career paths that they choose to take. Anyways, Miss Utah could have brought up the fact that Miss Sheryl Sandberg, I know she only had a minute, but we're going to try to do it as fast as we can. CEO of Facebook just did a book talking about Lean In, which is in her book. The whole point of it was to say that the disparities between men and women in leadership positions is not due because of discrimination, but because of choices. And in that book, she was trying to tell women to forget the choices that they make about being mothers and wives and focus on building your careers. In this attempt, we want you to make your husbands dumb themselves down and drop their balls and be good stay-at-home daddies while we go out and make the bacon. Even though most women, the majority of them, are not about that life, we want you to do that anyways. Miss Utah also could have talked about the fact that Anne-Marie Slaughter, another feminist leftist who decided, although she is in that category, she was in a very high capital position working for the White House, working for the Mangiant-in-Chief, and she left that position not to go home and go back to the kitchen, but to take a position that she could have more time to spend with her children and her husband. But she also said that the reason why she left that position is because she felt some type of way. Again, she could have been making those big bucks and having a real important job, I guess, but she chose to lean out. Miss Utah, you could have talked about that. Alright, wait a minute though. Let's not give up on Miss Utah yet. See, she's had time since the pageant and her loss and been made a fool of herself on national television. She has the opportunity to go actually study this concept, do some research, and come back with a valid response and clarify her mistakes. Let's see if she did better the second time around with actually having time to think about the question and actually have time to look it up and research it for herself.
Your mind.
Oh my gosh. So much. I can't even tell you. I was so excited and I was so nervous, and I got up to this top 5 question. I was the first one, and I got up and the question was a little bit confusing to me, and I just started speaking without really processing.
And you're 21 years old. It's only your 3rd pageant at that stage, at that level, and it had to be one of those moments you just wish you could have dug a hole and crawled in it for a second.
I did.
Can I give you a second chance at the question?
Please.
All right, here was the question. A recent report shows that in 40% of American families with children, women are the primary earners, yet they continue to earn less than men. What does this say about society?
So this is not okay. It needs to be equal pay for equal work, and it's hard enough already to earn a living, and it shouldn't be harder just because you're a woman.
That was very well done.
Thank you.
Marissa, thank you very much.
Well, damn, Miss USA, you done messed the game up. I kind of feel sorry for her at first, but I don't. Her first response, although it was really dumb and hard to watch, her rebuttal was even worse. Damn, Miss Utah, that's why you lost. I don't see the need for her to be all PC because she already lost. So what's the need for her to do that? I don't know. So this is the article that Sticky Finger sent me by Christina Hoff Summers. I guess she's been talking about this, doing this situation for a while. But before we get into that, check out a clip of her in action.
Speech. So these statistics are wildly distorted, egregiously, horrifically wrong. I don't have the time to go through the long and sorry and twisted tale of feminist misinformation, but I do want to take on probably the most durable false statistic in the American policy debate, and just to show how poorly served we are by the feminist establishment. They are in love with the statistic. They will never let it go. And it is a claim that women are cheated out of, women are paid 23 cents for every dollar a man is paid for the same job. The 23-cent gender pay gap is, now what is that figure? It's true. There is well, it depends how you calculate it, but roughly 23 cents. It's simply the difference. If you look at the wages of all men in the United States working full-time and all women, and you do the average, it turns out there's a 23-cent gap. And you've got Nancy Pelosi and vast numbers of the leaders of our women's group just up in arms. They're not going to stand it. They tried to pass the Paycheck Fairness Act. They're going to put an end to it. This will not stand. Well, the problem is that when any half-competent economist looks at the pay gap, they immediately see that you have to take into account that men and women are somewhat.
Speaking of economists, Thomas Brother Sorwell right here, who's been refuting this feminist bullcrap lies since 1970 something. Let him speak on this situation of the pay gap. Mind you, this is 1979 when he's talking about this.
$1,427 on an average basis for the year. Black males make $12,738. White females make $10,244, and black females make $9,476. It is clear from these figures, as indeed I think it's clear to most of us from what we see, that there is a discrimination against blacks and against women in our present system. Since not all blacks will be superior, how would you try to even that out so that there would be some equality of job opportunities?
Yeah, I'm sorry you missed the earlier part of the program when I pointed out that where you find people not represented evenly, that does not show the institutional effect, because almost nowhere in human affairs do you find people evenly represented. Well, if you compare comparable people with respect to age, with respect to education, etc., you get a totally different picture, both with respect to blacks and women. Now, the figures that I saw, for example, showed more recently that if you take black families where the husband and wife are both college educated and compare them to a white family where the husband and wife are both college educated, the black family is now earning $2,000 a year more. The problem is that very few blacks fall in that category. That when you compare category for category, then we're talking about getting people a decent education. I'm saying that you cannot say that numbers collected at the employer's place of business reflect simply the employer's policies. Those numbers reflect underlying conditions in the whole society, just as numbers collected at a hospital do not show you that the people are sick because they're in the hospital.
No, I would agree with that, but you would also have to agree that generally speaking, women are paid less, for example, for the same jobs as men.
No, I would not. I would not agree with that. If you're talking about women with the same number of years of experience, with the same continuous service, etc., then when I look at that, I don't find that disparity. I find, for example, in many cases, the women are making more, depending on how you break the data down. The difference with women is between married women and everybody else. That's the real difference.
Well, even as to single women, the Census Bureau statistics, the most recent ones I could find, 1978, say that single men are earning $11,100 and single women are earning $9,300.
Yes, I love the word single that is used. When I did my study, I didn't use single, I used never married. You see, a woman who is single at age 40, having spent 10 or 20 years raising children, is really not quite the same as a man of age 40 who's been working continuously for 20 years.
And the differential she cited is not that great, so it could easily be accounted for by the point
Yes,
you
because when I
raised.
break them down the other way, I did this for the academic world, and there I found the women who are never married, which is the term the way I take it. There they were earning more than the men. And similarly, when the government did data some years ago on women who had been working continuously since high school into their 30s, there you found that they were making slightly more than men of the same description. So the difference is between married women and everybody else. And married men get an extra bonus because their wives take care of many things that enable them to put more time into their careers.
I'm sure you're aware of the fact that there are approximately 15% of all homes in which there is only one wage earner. So that when you talk about women being able to take care of things for their married mate wage earner, the fact is that in the overwhelming majority of American homes, the women also work. And therefore, I don't think your explanation that women have other responsibilities and that's why they are...
Work can mean part-time work or full-time work. Women do not work full-time to the same extent that men. Part-time workers make less than full-time workers.
Beautifully refuted everything she shot out there. But the thing that's odd about this conversation is this is back in like the 1970s, right? Mid or late 1970s when this was recorded. Yet the premise still was back then that single women who are not married without children made more than their male counterparts. Now it's hilarious how now the news media outlets are hopping on that bandwagon how many years later, saying that, oh, okay, now we have proof that, you know, women who are single and don't have the obligation of a husband and children, they have more opportunities to go into their careers, whereas younger men who don't have husbands or wives and children, they don't have to focus on those things because they don't have that responsibility, and they're not as driven as the women who are younger. It's funny that how we're just now getting to the point where the news is starting to say that, yet from this video, which was done in the mid to late 1970s, that conversation was already discussed. Why is that?
Women still earn less than men, but some new data is telling a different story. In a 2010 study of single women between 22 and 30 with no children, researchers discovered women earned an average of 8% more than their male counterparts. So is the idea of the gender wage gap a myth? Carrie Lucas is the executive director of the Independent Women's Forum, the organization that conducted the study. Good morning to you, Carrie.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me on.
You know, I'm not really stunned by that finding because we've been hearing for years that young women are getting more education than men, that they're doing better in college. So it doesn't surprise me that in that young age bracket, before they have children or before they get married, that they're out earning men. Did it surprise you?
No, not at all. I think you're right. What we see is there's a very educated female populace coming up, that women are getting more degrees than men are. So it's no surprise that women's earnings are getting higher in that younger age set. What I really think that the main, the thing that people should take away from this, and I think what's the really good news for women, is that there isn't a system that's out to get you. Women aren't earning 3/4 of what men are earning for equal work. There's a bunch of different statistics and factors that affect how much you earn, and so when you start controlling for these, it shows that women have every opportunity to make as much money as men if they make the same choices that men make.
Well, it's interesting because we've heard for years that women make 77 cents to the dollar that a man makes for the exact same job. Take, for example, if you're an OBGYN. And many women scratch their heads and say, well, why would that be? I have the same amount of education. Maybe I even did better in college. What did you find?
Well, absolutely. This is not, the 77 cents on a dollar is not comparing people in the same jobs, working the same hours with the same education. That statistic, which is repeated so often, just compares full-time working women to full-time working men. But what you see is that there's men and women do very different things, have very different jobs. Even full-time working, even women who are considered working full-time tend to spend less time on the job than men do. And it shouldn't surprise anybody that somebody who works an extra hour a day makes more money than someone who works less time. And it's all those factors. So it's just, I think it's great news for women.
Well, kind of. When you look at how many women are actually CEOs of companies, it's still only 3% of the population. So there seems to be that fall off of women. I mean, it's one thing to say that women are outpacing men until they're 30 years old, but then when they get married and they have children, then they don't tend to get to those higher level jobs, and specifically to the tippy top of being a CEO.
But I think that a lot of women know, I ask women out there to think about it. Has maximizing your income always been your top priority? For a lot of women, that's simply not what drives them into the workforce. A lot of women say, I want to be able to be at home when my kids get home at 4 o'clock. I want to know that I don't have to travel and be away from my kids at night. Absolutely, but we should remember that men aren't all, there's often this myth that the jobs men take on are glamorous and that's why they're paid so much more. But in fact, a lot of men are doing really hard, sometimes distasteful jobs. They're working in sewers. They're driving all night through in trucks trying to make more money for their families. It's no surprise that they end up making more for some paid so much more, but in fact a lot of men are doing really hard, sometimes distasteful jobs. They're working in sewers. They're driving all night through in trucks trying to make more money for their families. It's no surprise that they end up making more for some of the hard and difficult jobs that they'll take on.
Right. Very interesting perspective. Carrie Lucas, the Executive Director of the Independent Women's Forum. Thanks for bringing.
All right, so this is Fox News. So this is the conservative, right-wing, leftist when it comes to this issue. She is covering the conversation, but if you notice what she said in the first 10 seconds of her news clip, she said there's a new data, a new study, new research. Mind you, Thomas Sowell has been arguing these same points for the last 30 years. Yet it's new information that women without children who are not married, they tend to make more than their male counterparts. This has been going on for a while now. Even back in the 70s when women didn't supposedly have as much anonymity as they have today, as much options and choices that they have today. So it's been like that for a long time now. Yet the news is putting these reports up from stuff that we've been saying, well, economists and people with common sense have been saying for the last 30, 40 years. But they got some new data to show otherwise. Also, she talked about how, well, we still don't see, well, we see these women making all this money up until 30, and then when 30 hits, they tend to change their mind, or something happens, and they're not going forward to get these positions. And that's where your girl, Sheryl Sandberg, comes in, and she tells those women to lean in instead of them choosing to lean out. Clear explanations for these situations, none of which are based on discrimination, all of which are based on choices and occupations. It's that simple. But let's get back to Ms. Hoff and let her keep refuting these feminist lies.
Have different majors in college. They enter different fields. They they work different numbers of hours per week. They are much more likely to take extended leaves. Anyway, there's a very big difference between women and men but you will have the feminist group, like women doctors are paid considerably less than male doctors for the same work. They don't do the controls. I don't see how women are well served by hyperbole, exaggeration, misinformation, sorry for the pun. How did they manage to run off with feminism? So my message today is to take back feminism, reform it, correct the excesses, insist that moderate and conservative women be given a voice, and then set about writing the next great chapter in the history of women's quest for.
If today's young women want to close the gender wage gap, they should change their majors. Aspiring early childhood educators, social workers, and should we consider the median earnings in these fields? Earnings are $36,000 to $39,000 respectively. By contrast, petroleum engineering and metallurgy degrees promise far more money medium earnings are 120,000, 80,000, and here are a list of the most remunerative majors compiled by a Georgetown University on education and workforce. Note that men overwhelmingly outnumber the women in all but one major. Alright, so here are the top male-dominated college majors that males choose. Petroleum engineering, 87% male. Pharmaceutical engineering, science and administrating, 48% male. Mathematics and computer science, 76% male. Astro engineering, 88% male. Chemical engineering, 72% male. Electrical engineering, 89% male. Naval architectural marine engineering, 97% male. Mechanical engineering, 90% male. Alright, so those are just to list a few of the men top fields that they choose that actually have lucrative fields. So here are the top 10 female remunerative majors. This time it's women who prevail in 9 out of the 10 majors. Counseling, psychologically, early childhood education, 74% for the first one. Early childhood education is 97%. Theology and religion is 34% female. Human services and community organizing, 81% female. Social working, 88% female. Drama and theater, arts, 60% female. Studio arts, 66% female. Communications, disorders, sciences and services, 94% female. Visual and performing arts, 77% female. Health and medical preparation programs, 55% female. Ms. Hoffer sums up the article with this: there are far more women than men in college, and they earn more than 58% of college degrees this year. And a large number of female students change from the secondary group to the first. That would do far more to narrow the gap than, say, Paycheck Fairness Act that still flounders in Congress, primarily targets alleged sexist practices of employers. But as for most economists will tell you, employers cannot be blamed for much or more of any of the gauge gap. It's women's choices that are problematic, beginning with their college majors. Pretty damn simple, huh? Makes sense.